Now it was the 399 before Christ in Athens when Socrates chose death over exile to preserve his moral integrity, as Plato's book Apology of Socrates reported. That's what we know about it. Now, although he was interacting with the most influential people of that time, he was leading a lifestyle a homeless nowadays would have. Actually, a modern times homeless, as he had a wife and 3 kids. And yeah, that's like often people don't know he had. But yeah, let's leave critics to man's role in society for another time. But the homeless thing, and the reason why I mentioned is poverty, we'll get to that later. And the reason I mention him is the fact that he chose death. Like the choice of death is something that caught my attention in that. And now, choosing death, which I would like to clarify now to be very different from the committing suicide thing like good old Arthur, aka the ladies' man, was suggesting, suicide should rather be referred to as waking up from a horrible nightmare. Now, choosing death is an action that hasn't been uncommon in our pasts. We can take duels as an example. Two people solving an argument by joining a 50% death dance. That's yeah. Or taking a heroic, often political stance that will get us killed, almost 100% in that case, or even just joining a lost war, which hits the 100% now. Could be other examples. And now we don't need statistics to notice that duelers or heroes belong to a rather magical, fairy tale-ish past, and suicide ratios don't drop. Why is that? Well, to my eyes, the most significant distinction is the purpose of those actions, like the reason why we get there. Now, however dumb it may sound in 2018 to die to make a point, it clearly has been happening for ages, and to me this looks like an ambitious behavior. Um, yeah, dying to take a stand makes the point you're dying for much stronger, and actually kind of gives a reason to your death, which which often we don't get to have a reason. And it's a very generous act, as a plus, towards the future of your species, given your point was any good, of course. And suicide, on the other hand, is an individualistic decision. There's no greater good in it, and in fact, it is easier to make once you believe there's no such thing as a greater good. It's exclusively aimed to put an end to stuff. Now, the key difference, made as an example, between what we should call a human sacrifice, if that makes any sense to you, and suicide, then, could be a Buddhist monk called, sorry for mispronouncing it, Thich Quang Du. I'll put the name in the description. This Buddhist monk burned himself to death in 1963 to protest against the South Vietnamese government persecutions against his Buddhist brothers. And though it was by all means a suicidal act, the purpose we were talking about makes it a human sacrifice. Like, here's the difference. And yeah, that's also another spiritual and poor figure choosing sacrifice over persecution, like our Socrates did before. Yeah, so the point, I hope seems clear by now, is that the stronger a spirituality, the higher the chance it will be ready to sacrifice. And the way I see it has to do with how strongly our connection with our natural self is. Because spirituality is quite attached to nature in a way. I mean, much more than known spirituality is. But why is this death, like why is this sacrifice correlated to nature? Well, because nature implies, in fact, sacrifice, especially when it comes to improve the species' conditions, or in some cases even ensure there will be a future for that species. There are countless animals for which breeding means death. Yet, I'd like to tickle the 21st century humans with the 21st century schizoid man with it's probably the most famous one out of those, but the praying mantis. Now we know that in many, like not all, cases the female praying mantis eats the male after they successfully mated. That's in order to keep the female well fed, drastically increasing the chances of a smoother continuum of the species. Now imagine if this was the human's case. I could literally picture every other animal accepting such faith, but nah, dying to reproduce, not humans. Rather say not the recent individualistic and ambitious humans. Like, human mothers used to risk death every time they had to give birth. In some cases, death was indeed happening. But now abortion gets preferred to a Planned Parenthood, which is But that's not a family day on anti-abortion movement speech. Like, don't panic yet, your internet dollars, your awful life choices are not to be questioned here. What is to be questioned, on the other hand, is the reason why this individualism is sounding obvious. Like, everyone goes like, yeah, of course, it's their choice. I mean, call me mainstream, call me communist, call me hippie, call me daddy. You can't quite stop me from addressing the causes to a rather. It's not capitalism itself as an economical theory, which, by the way, in countries like Switzerland is perfect. I mean, not perfect, but go give it a try. To capitalism's effects on our lives. That's what I see it as the most clear cause. Like, we became the direct objects of our investments. We're students at our age, our fathers were already our fathers. We spend so much money and real money, aka time, on our education. However, on building our future. And that it has become a non-compromisable, it has become non-compromisable with anything, and on top of all, with anyone. And I'm about our own life. And they have become still about our lives. Sorry, had a little thing there. They have become, in fact, more important than our lives themselves. And most surprisingly, considering we belong to the animal kingdom, they have become more important than our own species. And if we share the same natural behavior with the praying mantis, we'd simply go asexual. Because it does look like all we want to do is smash, but in fact, no one would play with his death over that. I mean, most of us wouldn't. And a bonus thought that I'd like to add that helps me proving my point is that murders and self-murders are usually part of a non-investing social class when there's not much like self-investment going on, like poor parts of the country, or just like young people that haven't had a chance to invest much in themselves yet. And yeah, I mean, that makes you think. And what also works as an example can be like the opposite: powerful people convert into whatever religion once they start facing death from up close. They spend their lives like investing on themselves, being enriched every second more by their own literally investment. I mean, hardly one can stand the two biggest losses one can have at once: the loss of everything you worked for and owned, combined with the loss of your own life. We just like merged together in this like getting better flux. And I mean, thanks God you won't be there witness in it, right? And well, to close up the idea and get practical, my solution here is not to take off our clothes and hop back on the trees just to get like closer to nature and secure a species continuum, nothing of that, except for the taking off the clothes part, back to the call me daddy thingy. It is instead to find a balance between what's ours as individuals and what's ours as species. Because, like, look, we cannot ignore the fact that we're here because most of the things before us went sort of right enough to keep mankind going, or we can be spoiled enough to think we are entitled to put an end on it, like an end to it. Like, who are we? And we can save our precious lives, but we cannot afford being asexual mainframe mantises. We can keep investing on ourselves just as much as we invest on our species, city, and environment in general. So that to sum the whole thing up in a motto, just stick to the the motto is something pretty capitalistic itself, so it might reach the point. Stay hungry and stay foolish, however much it pleases you, but in case you didn't notice, even with the guy saying stay hungry and stay foolish, death isn't questionable. So let us not turn it into an extinction. Let's preserve our race and environment. And yeah, I hope it's more convincing than the smoking kills sign and cigarette packs. And yeah, thanks for watching, I guess.